Hello Honors 10. Today you're going to be learning about prepositional phrases. The core of a prepositional phrase will always begin with a preposition and end with its object, which will always be a noun. That's important for when we talk about gerund phrases later this week. Everything that modifies the object is also a part of the prepositional phrase. The thing about prepositions is there's no real good way to remember them, so let's take a look at a list, and you guys simply are going to need to be able to memorize it.
The most challenging piece about learning prepositional phrases is that you guys simply need to know your prepositions. The prepositional phrase will begin with the preposition and include its object, and then any words that modify the object. In your textbook, you can find this list on page 19. A good way to think about prepositions is that it's anywhere a mouse can go or an eagle can fly, but truly that doesn't include all of our prepositions. You guys are just going to have to memorize your list of prepositions. If you haven't had to do that before, pause the video, copy these words down into your notes, and make sure you give yourself time to get familiar with your prepositions.
Now, our goal with prepositional phrases is to be able to identify their function within a sentence. So we need to be able to identify it as either acting as an adjective or an adverb. Adjective prepositional phrases do the same thing that a basic single word adjective does. It'll tell us which one, what kind, how many, or how much, and it will describe a noun. Whereas adverb prepositional phrases will do exactly what a single word adverb will do. They'll answer what I like to call our party invitation questions. What do I need to know when I'm going to a party? I need to know where, when, and why I'm going to a party. I need to know to what extent this party is maybe involved. Do I need a costume or something like that? So your adverb questions are going to be where, when, why, how, and to what extent. The other piece that you need to consider with adverbs is that they will always modify verbs, adverbs, or other adjectives. So sometimes working with the questions is easier, sometimes looking at what they modify is easier. Sometimes identifying adverbs can be tricky. Let's take a look at a few examples.
All right, when we take a look at prepositions, it's important to remember that our prepositional phrases will always begin with a preposition and end in a noun. Let's take a look at our first example. The original rules of basketball were written in 1982. I have two here. Of is a preposition, so of what? Of basketball. And I have in as a preposition. In what? In 1982. Now, these are either going to be adjectives or adverbs. Of basketball is describing what kind of rules. Rules is a noun, so this is an adjective prepositional phrase. Whereas in 1982 is telling me when the rules were written, so that one is an adverb prepositional phrase. In our second example, early basketball hoops were constructed of peach baskets. Of is my preposition. Of what? Of peach baskets is your phrase. This is telling me how those baskets were constructed. So this too is an adverb. For example 3, the baskets were mounted on the top of tall poles. Interestingly, I have two prepositions here, on and of. On what? On the top is one phrase, and then of tall poles is another. On the top tells me where the baskets were mounted, so this is also an adverb phrase. And of tall poles tells me about the top of what. So this is an adjective prepositional phrase. This means that we can have the object of one preposition be modified by another prepositional phrase.